I want to have a quick conversation about SSL certificate. I mean, you hear this word all the time. People do not understand what we mean by SSL certificate. So in today's conversation, I will clarify everything for you. What is an SSL certificate? Let's talk about that. So here's an overview I want you to pay attention to. So SSL stands for Secure Sockets Layer. So a Secure Sockets Layer certificate verifies the identity of a website and secures a connection between a web page and a web browser. Very important. So when you use your Mozilla, when you use your Google Chrome, an SSL certificate actually verifies the identity of the website and also secure the connection between a web page and a web browser. So if you run, let's say, an e-commerce site and are asking people to input information such as their credit card number or collect other sensitive information, an SSL certificate ensures that information transmitted to and from your website is encrypted. And encryption is really key here because it's all about protecting your users' data. So you will know that a website has an SSL certificate installed when HTTPS, in other words, Hypertext Transfer Protocol Secure, appears in front of a URL. For example, you have https://sweetykiwi.com, for example. And many browsers help you determine if a website has an SSL certificate by displaying a small image of a lock by the URL. So this is really important. On the other hand, if a website does not encrypt its data, you will see a warning sign and the words "not secure." So the question is, should you trust a website where there is no padlock, not secure? Well, it really depends. If you are going to use your private data, your banking data, that you do not want to do business with a website where there is no SSL certificate. But if you're just reading a blog, if you're just reading something about high school reunion or something that has no sensitive information sort of implication, then yeah, no problem. You can actually use the website, you can interact with it, not a problem. So an SSL certificate is the digital certificate that encrypts online communication. So when a visitor tries to access your website through their web browser, the certificate signals to the browser that your website is secure. And you can have an SSL certificate for free, but most of the time you have to pay for it. By the way, boss, welcome back to the show. It's really a pleasure to have you here. Make yourself comfortable. We're going to have a wonderful conversation. Now let's dig into the decision process here. Do you need an SSL certificate? The short answer is yes, definitely. If you own a website, you should have an SSL certificate. Because see, the thing is, if you're asking users to enter a login username and password, or are collecting private information such as credit card numbers, health data, or financial accounts, you need an SSL certificate to ensure the transmission of this data is secure. Imagine if you were to input the same data yourself. If you were to go to a website and somebody's asking you somebody asking you for your credit card number or your bank account information, would you provide that info if you knew that the website were not secure? No, right? Because you want to have a layer of security. So an SSL certificate adds a layer of security. Call it an extra layer of security. And that's what you want. So many website owners choose to have an SSL certificate even if they're not collecting sensitive information such as credit card numbers, because Google's algorithm rewards websites that have them. An SSL certificate also communicates to viewers that there is sensitive information such as credit card and passwords is protected on your website. So these days, most websites have an SSL certificate. I'm talking about 70 to 80% of websites do have an SSL certificate. Okay, this is really important to have in mind. Now, one thing I need to say before actually moving a little further is that when we talk about the need for an SSL certificate, it is an investment. So if you're listening to me right now and you own a website or you are about to roll out a website, you need to actually think about the cost of an SSL certificate as part of your operating cost. The same way you are paying right now for hosting, the same way you're paying for maybe third-party plugins, third-party apps, you need to think about an SSL certificate the same way, because if your user's data is not secure, your whole website, everything that you're building, this could crumble, tomorrow. Because imagine you have a lead capture form where you're collecting people's email addresses and people, and you're not able to secure that data. This is really not good. Okay, so this is what it is. It is what it is. By the way, boss, I want to quickly remind you of today's topic. We're having a conversation about SSL certificates, and I'm explaining to you in granularity what an SSL certificate really is. Now let's dig a little deeper here. So what are the pros and cons of SSL certificates? I first want to talk about the pros. So first of all, you have strengthening data security. In other words, you are strengthening the data security. So the thing is that this secure connections are powered by cryptography. So basically, those secure connections between the browser and server are really encrypted. In other words, while you are basically transmitting customers' data or your users' data, that data is encrypted. So this is really good. So the first level of the first advantage in our view when it comes to SSL is that you are strengthening data security. Now, any data that is actually transmitted online already is already strengthened to a certain degree. But by adding a layer, by adding an SSL certificate, you are adding an extra layer of data security strengthening. So this is really good. You also have another pro that we love. That is authentication and affirmation of identity. What does that mean? You need to understand everything happens on the internet. Everything happens on the internet. You don't know who is who, and you need to really authenticate whom you're dealing with, right? Let's say you have an e-commerce website and you want people to buy from your store. Of course, you want to have a clear idea who is buying from you, right? This is where you need to authenticate the person. You need to affirm the identity of the person. So what happens here is that SSL, you have within SSL certificates, you have several layers of that level of validation. So you have something called extended validation, and you also have organizational validity SSL certificates. I'm not going to go into details here, but just remember that it's just the layer of authentication and identity affirmation that really comes with SSL. You also have PCI compliance. When it comes to PCI, this is so important because the PCI has to deal with credit card payments. So if you want to accept payments from credit cards and debit cards from all over the world, you need to actually comply with PCI sort of instructions. So it's actually PCI DSS instructions. So this is another good thing. And you also are able to prevent a range of attacks. So basically, if you have an SSL certificate, think of the certificate as your army. So this army will actually guard your website against an attack of hackers all over the world. And so also an SSL certificate is crucial for search engine rankings. I just said it to you before that basically Google is rewarding websites that have SSL certificates because they are seen as more trustworthy, which they are anyway. And the last thing they need to pay attention to here is that SSL certificates increase customer trust. People trust your website. They know it is for real, right? Let me talk to you about the cons here. So SSL certificates are great things, but there are some disadvantages you need to be aware of. So first of all, the cost. So while free SSL certificates are available, they do not extend the level of security and encryption necessary. So you must choose a provider who has the infrastructure, expertise, and reputation to provide the highest levels of protection while keeping up with the industry best practices and rigors of compliance. So this comes at a cost. If you have multiple domains and subdomains, then your cost increased. By the way, I just want to say one thing. Do not go for a free SSL. Okay. At the end of the day, if you have a website or you have, let's say, an e-commerce vision, if you're trying to make money from the internet, please take the time to invest in your own venture. You know, this free thing has to stop. You can't be always looking for free. No, the CEA is investing something in maintaining the SSL infrastructure. You need to actually be willing to actually reward that effort. So you want to go with something very solid, something very sophisticated, and pay for it. Okay. So the cost is a disadvantage, but listen, it is an investment and you will get a return on your investment if you have a secure website because people will trust you, among other things. You also have the expiration. So SSL certificates have an expiry date that needs to be monitored, and the certificates renewed for continued security. So the process of monitoring and renewal can be more complex in the absence of visibility. So to address this disadvantage of SSL, you have reputable providers like Entrust from IndusFace offer state-of-the-art certificate management system to manage SSL effortlessly and effectively with a cohesive dashboard, full visibility, and real-time insights. Now, this, you might be thinking, well, this is nothing. Well, if you have multiple domains and subdomains, things become complicated. So you need to actually validate, you need to renew, you need to monitor the expiration dates of all those SSL certificates. So this is where the complexity really comes in. You also have SSL related vulnerabilities. So while there are powerful benefits of SSL for the website, there are not without vulnerabilities. And the thing here is that you have some vulnerabilities such as Poodle, you have Beast, you have Heartbleed, Crime, and so on. Websites with certificates using these older protocols are marked as insecure by browsers. Let's talk about the steps here. So how do you get an SSL certificate? I want to go through the step-by-step here. So right now, it's relatively easy to get an SSL certificate, and many of the best website builders and web hosting providers even offer them for free. So the first thing you want to do here is, even before looking for an SSL certificate provider, see if your current hosting company, if you have a website right now or you're thinking about having a website, think if you want to see if your current hosting service doesn't offer already the SSL certificates. So hosting providers such as GoDaddy and Bluehost offer the ability to buy an SSL directly on the website. So if your site doesn't already have one, you can also use a third-party certificate authority. So this is kind of cool. And to research some of the most reliable options with the best prices, check out our videos. We actually released a video not long ago about the best SSL certificate services. And the thing here is that, again, as I said earlier, you want to think about an SSL certificate as an ongoing cost. It must be seen as an operating cost. The same way you think about a hosting company. Do not think, well, because I don't need security. You need to have a security. You need to have the little padlock next to your browser, next to your address. This is actually a sign of security, a sign of trustworthiness, a sign of authority as well. And one thing I need to say also is that when we talk about getting an SSL certificate, it is not a process you can just say, okay, you should just sign up with a provider. No, you need to first have a list of all your domains and subdomains, so you have a better idea about your cost. Because the thing is, if you do not evaluate your cost, or let's say the number of domains that you have appropriately, you might end up paying a lot of cash. So do the analysis beforehand, okay? And you want to have a clear idea about all your digital assets, your websites, your landing pages, because again, when we talk about SSL certificates, we're not just talking about websites. We're speaking also about any digital assets that allows you to collect information. So if you have a landing page, if you have a sales funnel, those capabilities require SSL certificates. So this is where you really want to have a full-on service that actually caters to all that. And you also need to see whether you want to have multi-year SSL certificates, or you want to have certificates that renew on an annual basis. So, but everything depends on your budget as well. Let's talk about the SSL certificate typology. So in other words, what are the different types of certificates? Because you actually have three main types of certificates, and those certificates have different needs, different configurations. So let's talk about a few of them. So you have domain validated, DV. You have organization validation, OV, and then you have extended validation, EV. So the one best suited for you will depend on your websites and how much security you need. So let's first quickly go through the details here. Let's first talk about DV SSL. In other words, domain validated SSL. So this is best for project, like let's say personal project websites, and is the least expensive option. So it requires that the website owner verify that the domain is registered to the domain owner, which is done through the WHOIS database, right? So this is the DV SSL. So you only can get away with this one if you have a personal project website. It can be It can be a family project. It can be something that you don't really are not collecting people's data for. Okay. Then you have the OVSSL. So here you have the Organization Validation SSL. This is best for business or nonprofit websites and require a higher level of verification. So it is therefore considered more secure. And the SSL certificate issuer verifies the address and location of the owner, among other things. You're going to have expect a series of back and forths when it comes to emails with the SSL certificate issuer. So this is for the OVSSL. And then you have the third type is the EVSSL. So this is actually the extended validation. This is the highest. So this is best for e-commerce businesses and businesses exchanging financial data, because this offers the most amount of protection. And in addition, this certificates offer the highest monetary warranties to any website viewers affected by an SSL feature failure. So if there is an SSL failure, you have basically you will be taken care of financially speaking. So this sort of gives a level of reassurance, if you will, to your website visitors. By the way, boss, I want to quickly remind you of today's topic. We're having a conversation about what an SSL certificate is. So let's talk about the approach here. So what does an SSL contain? Let's really go a little deeper. Let's go a little granular here. So we can really understand what we're talking about. So if you click on the small image of a lock that appears next to any websites with an SSL certificate, you'll be able to view some key information about this certificate. So you'll see the name of the certificate holder, who it was issued by, and the expiration date. And so this is an important element. Why? Because if you are, let's say, if you are going to buy from an e-commerce website, having the ability to see or to identify the certificate holder tells you this is a legit website. At least you can have an idea. Because see, when you start clicking on that padlock and you have, let's say you have weird names or you have not clear names, you know that something is fishy with the website anyway. And so you're also able to see who issued the certificate, the SSL. That way, if you know the issuer is a reputable company, then this also adds an extra layer of assurance. An SSL certificate also contains some details about the issuer of the certificate, a copy of the issuer's public key, and a digital signature of the certificate issuer. And this digital signature has a lot of information that you can actually use. And especially if you are trying to really sort of trace things. Now, you're not in law enforcement, so you don't really need that level of granularity. But the thing is that if there is an SSL failure, those are elements that law enforcement, I think officials use to actually trace things down. This is why it's important to actually have an SSL certificate, because it's not just about doing the prevention. It's also doing the protection afterwards if something were to happen, or the remediation also, the mitigation also. So again, what I'm trying to say here is that you have a constellation of data points that actually you can find in an SSL. So next time you see the little padlock next to the browser, next to the address of a website, just know that it really contains tons of information. Thank you so much for your attention. I really appreciate it. In today's conversation, I want to quickly recap today's show. So I explained to you what an SSL certificate is. I give you the overview, the decision, the pros, the cons, the steps you need to take if you want to get an SSL certificate, and also the approach. Thank you so much. God bless you. I'll speak to you another time. But until then, remember, stay marvelous.